Well, good afternoon or good evening. My name is Ben Falluer. I am one of the new pastors here, associate pastors at the men's luncheon earlier this month. I told a joke and it was pretty funny, so I'll tell it again. I think the leadership of the church, when they were looking at the next round of associate pastors with these end times and all these things going on, they figured they'd get a better deal to get them by the pound, so they got me and Jose. If you would do me a favor and take your Bibles out, whether they be digital or paper, and we're going to look at Mark chapter 5 tonight. Mark chapter 5. Mark chapter 5 is one of my favorite stories in the New Testament. Just for those who perhaps don't know or don't remember me, my wife and I, our family were part of the Calvary Chapel, Palm Harbor, when we first started quite a few years ago. And the Lord has moved us around to Alabama, and then to Orlando area. This is going to be fun. Thank you, Lord. And now we're back. This is my first time in full-time ministry. I have been serving the Lord faithfully for quite a few years. I've been a youth pastor, had some different roles, but this is my first time stepping in with both feet all in full-time ministry. And so I am excited. I'm finding out that it's easy to teach on faith, and it's a lot different when you have to actually take those big steps of faith. And so I'm excited. I will tell you that Miss Carrie and myself, which I'm not supposed to tell you, she's right here. She gets embarrassed when I call her out. But we have been blessed these last few weeks with Calvary Chapel Palm Harbor. The fellowship, the grace, the community, all those things. I just want to say thank you for accepting us and showing us God's love. So we are excited to be part of the fellowship. So Mark chapter 5, I'm going to start in verse 21. And this is one of my favorite stories in the New Testament. It's a story about a guy named Jairus. He's a ruler of the synagogue, but more importantly, he's a dad. And one of my favorite stories, there's a personal application for me 10 years ago, which I'll tell you about when we get to that part. But there's a lot of good stories, but more importantly, the story about Jairus is a story about Jesus. And those are always good, right? Those are the ones that are encouraging. And so we're going to start in verse 21. But before we start, let me just give you a little bit of background. Jesus has started his earthly ministry. He's been doing some healings. He's had some miracles. This is a process where he was teaching. He decided to go across the water with his disciples. There was a bad storm. He was sleeping. The disciples said, "Hey, we're going to die. Jesus, you want us to die?" And he muzzled the waves. He muzzled the wind. They got to the other side, and they were greeted by a naked, crazy, demon-possessed guy. It's funny, when I was teaching youth, one of the things I realized is that the whole boat gate across it says, hey, they reached the other shore. But Jesus was the one that met the demon-possessed guy. And in my mind, I always pictured like the disciples were getting out of the boat following Jesus, and the demon-possessed guy comes running out, and the disciples were like, whoa, let's get back in the boat. Jesus, this one's on you. Roll up the window. But anyhow, so they had that. Jesus healed the demon-possessed guy, and they left, and now they're coming to the other side. So that's where we are in Mark chapter 4, verse 21. Now when Jesus had crossed over again by boat to the other side, a great multitude gathered to him, and he was by the sea. By the sea. I mean, I don't mean to be funny, but what can happen to me, I know it doesn't happen to you guys probably because you guys are professional Calvary Chapelites, but what happens is sometimes when I go to God's Word, I can disconnect and I can go back to the once upon a time, and it's a story, and I forget that this is real. Like these are real people, and that Jesus is real, and he stood by the sea. We can't go right now, thank you, COVID, but we could, in theory, go over to Israel. We could stand there by the sea. So Jesus is there by the sea with multitudes. And behold, one of the rulers of the synagogue came, Jairus by name, and when he saw him, that is, he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. And he begged him earnestly, saying, "My little daughter lies at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her, that she may be healed, and she will live." If we were in a Baptist church, I would tell you that point number one, take it to Jesus. Jairus has done the best thing you can do. If you ever get to a place where you can't get through something, there's an opportunity, there's an issue, there's pain, there's something, anything, the best thing you could do is take it to Jesus. Jairus has a title here in the verse where he's the ruler of the synagogue, but more importantly, he's a dad, he's a parent. I can tell you guys I've been a parent for 20 years. My mom told me when we were pregnant with Josh, he's my oldest one, she said, once that child is born and once you hold that boy in your hands, you'll never be the same again. You will think and you will feel like a parent. Those of you who are parents, you know what I'm talking about. Those stories, the news articles, you can read them before, and it touches you a lot different when you become a parent. So here Jairus has a child that's at the point of death, and he comes to Jesus. Heart is softened. Hey, I'm going to go take this to Jesus. So number one, take it to Jesus. So Jesus went with him, and a great multitude followed him and thronged him. Two things I want to make out of this. First of all, Jesus went with him. For those of you guys who are servants of the word and you know the word in and out, you'll know that there's many times that Jesus is healed and he didn't do this exact thing. There was a time where there was a military officer and he wanted to have a servant healed, and he went to see Jesus and he said, hey, Jesus, can you heal my servant? And I'm paraphrasing, but Jesus said, yeah, and he was going to go with him, and he said, no, I understand about power and authority. You don't need to come to my house. Just say the word and he'll be healed. And Jesus said, I haven't seen faith like this. And immediately the guy was healed. Jesus didn't have to go there. Are you with me? There's another story about a dad who had a son who was sick. He was going to die, and he came to Jesus, and Jesus said, your son is healed. And he started going back home, and on the way home, his servants from the house met him halfway and said, hey, your son is healed. And the dad said, about what time? And they told him the time. And he says, that's the time that Jesus healed him. So take it to Jesus, right? You with me so far? And the second one is trust his ways. Sometimes we get in a habit of, we see the Lord move a certain way and we say, okay, that means it's got to be this way. It sounds silly, right? College football is starting. Praise the Lord. And in college football, there's certain people, I'm not going to say names, I'm not going to pick anybody out, but if the Florida Gators win, then we have to do exactly the same thing to make the Florida Gators win, and we get superstitious. And it's funny, and it sounds silly, like, hey, you need to sit in that chair, and you need to wear those socks, and you can't wash your shirt. It's silly, right? However, as Christians, we get in a habit of, the Lord does something, and we say, hey, I've got to be at this place, I got to say these words, I got to do these things, and we forget that it doesn't have to always be the same. Take it to Jesus. Trust his ways. I'm going to read this verse one more time because this is so. So Jesus went with him, and a great multitude followed him and thronged him. Anybody use that word recently? Let me tell you what thronged is. It's the exact opposite of social distancing. That is a anti-COVID word. So to give you, thronged, if we were in Alabama, the great state of Alabama, I got to be careful how I say it, in the great state of Alabama, they would tell you they were wadded up, right? So you're with your family, you're having a celebration, it's time to take pictures, you get wadded up so you can take a picture. Years ago, Miss Carrie and I, we were on a double date with somebody I worked with at Disney. We decided it would be great. We were in that time between Thanksgiving and Christmas. It'd be great to go to one of the resorts, give a nice dinner, take a monorail over and go watch the fireworks at the Magic Kingdom. I mean, what a great idea. And around the Christmas time, around the holidays, they have fake snow, they're pumping in Christmas music, you got Christmas, I mean, that's a perfect, double date with your wife. And so as we went, I'm talking about thronging. So as we went, we had our dinner, we go to Magic Kingdom, and there's a lot of people, Disney, you're doing the Disney shuffle, one hand is on your wallet, and you're walking slow. We got there, we watched the fireworks show, it was beautiful, it was great, it was amazing, and then when we turned to leave, us and 70,000 other people were now trying to go to that exit. We were thronged. There was no walking, you were shuffling like this. That is thronging, you're shuffling. So to continue the story, to give you perspective of what it is to be thronged or thronging, I'm shuffling and I realize that there's a 4 or 5-year-old boy in front of me now who can't see his parents. He has that look of, I'm lost, I'm disconnected from my parents. Are you with me? So hero Ben, not known for thinking the best thoughts and the worst things, I said, you know what I need? I got a good vantage point, right? I can see. This kid needs to see better. I mean, right now, all he sees is the end is near. Like physically, the end is near. All he's looking at is shorts and breeches. And so without thinking, I said, are you lost? And he said, yeah. So I grabbed this child and I picked him up so he could see, right? And I said, do you see your parents? And he goes, yeah, over there. And the parents now see us. And so the crowds part. I put the boy down. He goes to his parents. My wife looks at me and she says, it's probably not a good idea to grab a kid when he's lost for his parents. But you get the perspective. Jesus is now going with Jairus. He's going to his house, and there's a great multitude, and they are thronging him. They are packed in. They are watered up. They are shoulder to shoulder. Verse 25. Now a certain woman had a flow of blood for 12 years, and had suffered many things from many physicians. She had spent all that she had, and was no better, but rather grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, I want to stop and just real quick. This phrase, when she heard about Jesus. when I read the New Testament and I read about Jesus, there's some of these stories that are so exciting to me, like the lepers that are healed and the deaf that hear. There's a story of a man that was healed. He had heard that Jesus was walking through the gates, and he shouted out and he said, "Jesus, have mercy on me." You guys know the story, right? And so that always fascinates me, because in that time, you didn't travel much, so how did he know about Jesus? And this is what I think. This is not doctrine. This is what I think, because I have a great imagination, because we didn't have TV until I was 14. This is what I think. I think that if you're a deaf person in that deaf community, and the first time Jesus healed somebody who was deaf, I think it spread like wildfire. I think there was people that said, "What? What did you say?" Because I know for me personally, if I'm struggling with something, like if I'm trying to fix something at the house, or I have something, hey, my knees bother me, and I hear somebody say, "Hey, my knees bother me," I immediately kind of lean in, and I forget what the term is that kids use now when you're like stalking or something, like you're looking over their shoulder, but I lean in because I want to hear, how do they fix it? And so what I think is, when it says that when she heard about Jesus, I think that she had this issue of blood for 12 years, and she was very sensitive, and she was listening. Who is this Jesus that the dead come to life, where the blind see and the deaf hear? The reason I bring that up is I think that for me personally, evangelism is hard for me. When I get ready to tell somebody about Jesus, and it's one of those cold calls where I feel the Holy Spirit wants me to say something, all of a sudden my mind just rushes with the Romans road, and it's the salvation, and all the blood in my legs and my knees goes to my ears, and all of a sudden it feels like, and then my knees get weak, and I don't speak English, and I get real goofy, and I'm like, "Lord, I'm trying, but it just doesn't work." I think that if we just focus on sharing what Jesus has done in our lives, I think that's a great evangelistic tool. Instead of all that, if I were to just share, quite honestly, plainly, hey, my marriage was a wreck. Yeah, we had physical intimacy, but we didn't have real intimacy. Jesus came in and he saved my marriage. Hey, my kids, hey, I was a heathen. I was a wreck. And Jesus did this for me. He restored me. I think that's the best evangelistic tool. Better than Romans Road. I could be wrong, but I think what happens is people have a need and they're listening. How does this guy have peace? How does this lady have hope? How does she have all these things? And the answer is Jesus. Let me tell you what Jesus has done for me personally. When she heard about Jesus, she came behind him in the crowd and touched his garment, for she said, "If only I may touch his clothes, I shall be made well." Immediately the fountain of her blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of the affliction. And Jesus, immediately, knowing in himself that power had gone out of him, turned around in the crowd and said, "Who touched my clothes?" I chuckle when I read this, because Corey Saul reminded us a couple weeks ago on a Sunday morning, for those who were there. He said, "Hey, if you ever read your Bible and you're studying and you see Jesus ask a question, he already knows the answer. He's Jesus, right?" So when Jesus asks a question, and I believe the comment Corey said is because he's preparing somebody for the answer he's going to give. He already knows the answer. Who touched my clothes? But his disciples said to him, "You see the multitude thronging you, and you say, 'Who touched my clothes?'" And he looked around to see her who had done this thing. Very important. Jesus knew who she was. He knew the issue, and he knew she was healed. He knew all that stuff. So why was he calling her out like that? I believe it's because that she thought she had stolen something from Jesus. I snuck up, I got a touch, and I got healed. And there'll be questions. Is it permanent? Is it lasting? Is it going to happen? And I think Jesus wanted her to know that, hey, you didn't steal anything. It's by faith that you have it. Sometimes we feel like maybe we snuck something out of Jesus. Hey, if he knew all about my past, if he knew about those years in college, if he knew about that relationship, if he knew about whatever this, I got one over him, and we need to know that, no, Jesus knows everything. And it's our faith that makes us right. And he looked around. There's a verse in the Old Testament, and I apologize. I didn't get a chance to look it up. And even now, I'm just reminded. It's a very encouraging verse. I believe it's in Psalms, and it says, "The eyes of the Lord go to and fro to show himself strong to those whose hearts are set on him." Let me just tell you, it's exciting what Jesus is looking for, right? I remember my dad. My dad is a very passionate guy. He's a preacher. He's a pastor. And I remember when we were living in a house in Largo, he was struggling. He had some issues, had been kicked out of the church, and some other things that are going on. And I remember he read that story in John about the young man who was healed, and he went to the synagogue, and the synagogue had kicked him out. And there's a verse that says, "And when Jesus had found him," my dad read that verse, and he threw up his hands, and he ran out the front door, and he jumps up and down in the front yard. He's like, "Here I am! Here I am!" It's exciting to know that Jesus is looking for you, that Jesus was looking for her. the woman, fearing and trembling, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your affliction." Remember where we're at, right? We have this cool story about this lady who's healed, 12 years, issue of blood, is healed. But remember, we started the story with Jairus. Jairus had come to Jesus with this issue. He had taken it to Jesus. Jesus said, "Let's go together." And so we're going to trust Jesus, right? We're taking it to Jesus. We're going to trust his ways. Here's the third one. You got to trust his timing too, right? I don't know about you guys, but when I bring it to the Lord, I expect, just like that microwave, I want it now. Just like when I go to Starbucks or wherever and I buy my coffee, I want it now. I don't want to wait 15 minutes. Don't tell me this. I want it now. It's the same thing with the Lord. When I feel the pain and I feel the suffering and I feel those things, Lord, I want you to work now. We have to take it to Jesus. We have to trust his ways. We have to trust his timing. While he was still speaking, some came from the ruler of the synagogue's house who said, "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further?" I can imagine as a dad, the hope, Jesus is coming with me. Jesus is going to make it right. I'm looking forward to these things. I've taken it to Jesus. I'm trusting his timing. I'm trusting his ways. And then those words come, right? And it's devastating. The diagnosis, the financials, the relationship, whatever it is for us here in 2020, that thing that comes is now dead. Devastated. As soon as Jesus heard the word that was spoken, he said to the ruler of the synagogue, "Do not be afraid, only believe." If I were to give you 4 things to take tonight, if you don't remember any of my stories or any of that stuff, it's okay, but remember these 4 things. Take it to Jesus. Trust his ways. Trust his timing. Do not be afraid. 10 years ago, 2010, our oldest son, Joshua, always been an athlete since the time he was 3 or 4. Always was an athlete. All-star baseball, football. I can tell you stories. I can brag on my boy for years. 2010, we noticed that he started getting lumps on his neck. Big lumps. His lymph nodes were swollen up the size of golf balls. He began to get like a yellowish color to his skin, and he got real bruised. Phenomenal ball player. They called him the Alabama Slammer because we moved back from Alabama to St. Cloud. He's crushing baseball. The catcher, made the All-Stars, but his body, there's something was wrong. He was tired all the time. And so he would play an inning, he'd have to rest 2 innings and play an inning. Miss Carey, knowing something wasn't right, took him to the doctor. The initial diagnosis was mono. Miss Carey, when it comes to medical stuff, she is a very good parent. She's very good. And she said, the tests don't line up with the diagnosis. Something's not right. So we took him to another doctor. Still mono. Miss Carey, something's not right. So she finally got an appointment with an infectious disease doctor at Morse Hospital over in Orlando. Infectious disease knows those kind of things and can look into them. It was in September, the first part of September, right before Labor Day weekend. Miss Carey went with Josh. Josh is in the room. Infectious disease doctor comes in and looks at Josh, looks at his skin, looks at his bruises, looks at the lumps, takes Miss Carey and says, "I need to talk to you in my office." Diagnosis, leukemia, just like that. She's trying to tell me on the phone, Josh is riding in the car, Josh doesn't know it. How do you tell a 10-year-old that he has cancer, right? And so she's not going to tell Josh. And so she's trying to explain to me, but I can tell there's something more and she doesn't want to tell me, right? So she gets home and she tells me, and as a dad, I'm devastated, right? And I'll be honest with you guys, you begin to question, Lord, I do all these things for you. This is what you give me as a child. Lord, take this, let me have it, and let him live. Lord, he's got so much, just take it. I'll take it. Let me have it. You get bitter, you get angry, you get afraid. Next morning, leukemia, childhood leukemia, there's no time to waste. So the next morning we had an appointment at 8 o'clock in the morning at all children, or Arnold Palmer Hospital, the Children's Hospital, so they can put in the port and start the chemo. No waiting the next day. We drive over to the hospital in the morning. It's me and Miss Carey and Josh. We're chills trying to explain it to Josh, high level to a 10-year-old. You're like in a bubble, right? So things are not normal. You feel like you're in a dream. It's crazy. And so you valet, we go inside. We're trying to fill the paperwork, the admin paperwork out. Miss Carey forgot her purse in the truck. So I said, I'll get it. So I go outside to the valet guy and I said, rather than you get it, I'm trying to explain it to you and stuff, just give me the keys, tell me where it's parked, and I looked at the purse. So as I get in the wall, just the weight of all that just came on me. And I prayed. I cried out loud on the sidewalk. I said, Lord, it's too much. I can't do it. I can't go through this. You've given me too much. And he gave me, the Holy Spirit gave me this verse. Do not be tell you that, to know a little bit about the Falluers, Joshua is 20 years old. He's cancer-free. He's a big old boy. He's bigger than his dad. I reminded me he looks like his dad too, which is good. For those of you who have teenage parents, tell them they look like their dad. They take it as a personal offense. I think it's great. But listen, the Lord took us through a journey of 4 years, and it was rough. It was hard. I got to see God's grace. I got to see His power. I got to see His church. I got to see things that I've never been seen. Let me finish the story. Jesus permitted no one to follow Him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When He came to the house of the ruler of the synagogue and saw a tumult and those who wept and wailed loudly, when He came in, He said to them, "Why make this commotion and weep? The child is not dead, but sleeping." And they ridiculed Him. But when He had put them all outside, He took the father and the mother of the child, those who were with Him, and entered where the child was laying. Then He took the child by the hand, and He said to her, "Talitha cumi," which is translated, "Little girl, I say to you, arise." Immediately the girl arose and walked, for she was 12 years of age, and they were overcome with great amazement. Take it to Jesus. Trust His ways. Trust His timing. Do not be afraid. Great amazement. What if I told you that those things that we're going through, that you're going through in 2020, those places where there could be fear, maybe you don't have a child that's dealing with something like this, maybe it's a financial thing, maybe it's COVID, maybe it's the election, maybe there's a relationship, maybe your teenage child is not, whatever it is, what if those pieces of fear are there? What if you just took it to Jesus? What if you trusted His ways? What if you trusted His timing and you didn't fear? You would see great amazement. What if the Lord uses those for opportunities to show His glory? I leave you with a couple more verses when it comes to fear. The Lord's been working on that verse for me for 10 years. I realized that the way I parent, the way I have my relationship with my wife, the way I do my finances, my heart is inclined to base decisions based on fear instead of on love. Jesus never did anything out of fear. He always did things out of love, and I want to be like Jesus. So I have to catch myself, and so I would encourage you. Paul wrote a letter to Timothy. Timothy was a young man, and he said, "Hey, Timothy, stir those gifts up. Don't forget about those gifts and those callings. And remember, we have not been given a spirit of fear," right? We've been given a spirit of power, of love, of a sound mind. I don't want to be offensive, but have you guys watched the news lately? Do you see power and love and a sound mind? That's what the church is supposed to be. Because we've been given a spirit of power and of love and a sound mind. And lastly, I'll leave you with this one. This is going to be me personally. Again, I don't know if it's because we didn't have TV until I was 14, but I visualize things very easy in my head. And so when I picture fear and fear overtaking me, I'm reminded of the verse in John. John's talking about judgment, but he's talking about love, and he says, "There is no fear in love, because perfect love casts out fear." I think it's the NIV says that perfect love drives out fear. So let me tell you what that looks like for me. When I have fear that begins to overcome me, when I realize, hey, I feel like a failure as a parent, I feel like a failure as a husband, or I have fear, I say, you know what? Jesus, I'm going to take it to you and I'm going to give it to you. And you know, in my mind, what it looks like, this is what perfect love drives out fear. And you can laugh if you want, but in my mind, this is perfect love is Jesus, right? And so when I pray, I know that perfect love drives out. That means Jesus shows up with the red pickup truck of the gospel, and He snatches fear up by the back of the neck and by the scruff of the pants, and He throws him in the back of the truck, and He takes off. And if I allow fear to come back in, I just call on Jesus again, and I take it back to Jesus. And He shows up again with that truck of the gospel, and He grabs fear and throws him in the back of the truck, and He takes off. I'll leave you with that. 4 things. Take it to Jesus. Trust His ways. Trust His time. Let's pray. Lord, thank you so much for your word. Thank you for the encouragement that you don't ask us to fight these things on our own, that you provide a way, that you are a Savior, that you love to save. And so, Lord, even in my own heart, the response might be to go work harder and not fearing, or work harder at other things, Lord. I know that that way will lead me to a way of legalism and hardness and meanness and not love. So, Lord, even in my own heart, remind me to take it to you. Those things that I struggle to continue to take it to you. Lord, we're grateful for your word. We're grateful for fellowship, that you've given us a spirit of power these things to me.